This is Trista Polo, and I'm here with this week's plate story. Today we're spending some quality time with Jhae Pfenning of Hard Parking Podcast. His car and plate have been iconized as a collector's item, and we'll hear the story today about why. Jhae works in IT by day and is a podcaster by night. We will talk about the start of his podcast, as well as his own origin story growing up in South Dallas. Whether you are into cars or not, you will enjoy our conversation. Jhae is a dad, a husband, and like his podcast, he's a non-automotive guy. We'll hear his story and his thoughts on many things today. But first, some plate story news. It's the beginning of the year, and so lots of states' DMV offices have received Open Records Act requests from news agencies. Everyone seems to want to know which vanity plate requests their state rejected last year. Of the states reported, Colorado seems to have the most at more than 23,000 rejected requests. They really don't like it when you try and put your favorite state attraction on your plate, so Vail and Aspen are out. But they also don't like references of food and beverage, oven, pear, and soup being examples. Pop culture is also not allowed, so Tool, Whack, and Lols, LOLZ, were excluded. I mean, maybe it's just because they aren't hip enough to approve? And a whole host of others I can't really figure out why they were rejected, including Goal, Love, and Boba, 3 plates I would actually love to have on my car. Ohio and Missouri reported that nearly 400 plates failed to pass approval of each of their states for many reasons, including if the plate would present an unreasonable danger to the health and safety of the applicant. HTP-CKT, Hot Pocket, and QAnon are both examples from Missouri. Oregon rejected almost 300 plate requests. They include any vanity plate request that refers to illegal acts, alcohol, and apparently bodily functions. 3 examples are burp, toots, and Merlot. Georgia rejected about 200 plates, including pandemic plates, sports plates, and anything with AF, like vegan AF. Connecticut rejected about 80 plates, including the plate IH8CT, which stands for I Hate Connecticut. I mean, would you approve a plate that said it hated you? I probably wouldn't either. Every state reported that Biden and Trump plates were on the list and were rejected. They also all said if a plate is found to be offensive after it's approved, it'll be recalled and the car owner will be required to turn it in. So hold on to those plates while you can, everyone, and let's go chat with Jhae Pfenning. Hey there, I'm so excited to have Jhae Pfenning of the Hard Parking Podcast from Phoenix, Arizona with us. His license plate is Vf1 Snsx. Welcome, Jhae.
Thank you, Trista. It's exciting to be on the show today.
It's exciting to have you on the show. Now, before we get into your plate story, I have to say that I've been connected to you since I kind of got into the podcast world. We connected on a Facebook group, I think, and you were, can I just tell you, you're the only 4-star review I ever got on my podcast.
Are the rest of them 5 stars?
Yes, they are.
Okay, here's the thing on that. I'm like a teacher sometimes, right? And my mindset is, it's like how you have to give somebody something to shoot for. Because I think we live in a world where, especially in podcasting, right? Especially on some of these pages, like for like, review for review. And some of the people, they have no interest in listening to your actual podcast. So they'll listen to it at 1.5, 2 times the speed, or they'll just skim through it and say, oh, best podcast in the world, 5 stars, keep doing what you're doing. It's like, no, I want to know. If it's good, is it something you would tune into every day? Do you want to be part of the conversation? Maybe did you really like it, but it's not your thing? Give me something to shoot for. Now, I don't want to get a freaking 1, but like most people, if I really, really like the podcast, you're going to get a solid 4. I'm like a hard grade teacher. And then I wrote you down.
Yeah, you did. You did. And this was, I'm actually right on Apple Podcast reviews right now. I pulled it up.
Oh, no.
It was March 24th, and I think my first episode came out around the 7th or the 12th of March of 2020. So this was my very first review. So I'm a new podcast. I'm a new podcaster after a 5-year break, and I got 4 stars. I gotta say it I never forgot you. It left an impression. But here's what you wrote: a fresh approach. Really enjoyed this podcast. Every vanity plate should have a story behind it. Trista has taken a golden opportunity in seeking out people to hear and share their stories. This podcast is refreshing and will only get better. So there's that like room for improvement, shoot for improvement.
You know what? Here we are.
Here we are.
Over a year later. And yeah, I wrote you down on my little book of people to eventually connect with. It's like, okay, I got to get Trista on. Okay, I got your Trista on. Trista's plate story. So I'm glad you actually was like, hey man, we doing this or not?
Yeah, well, I've gotten very good at follow-up. Follow-up used to be my least favorite skill, and I've really worked on it. So now I'm about average to a little bit above average. But I just couldn't step over that. I had to bring that up since it just always stuck with me. You've been part of my journey from the beginning because of that.
So even though it was 4 stars, were you like, that SOB, I'm gonna get him, or like that was actually a really like what were your thoughts?
My response to it was like, where's my 5 stars? First of all, how come I didn't get 5 stars? And then the fact that you said it was refreshing and will only get better, like that really stuck with me. I'm like, okay, so he sees room for improvement. He liked it, but it can only get better. I mean, how can you expect in your first couple of weeks of something to be the best you'll ever be at it? Then
100%.
Where are you going to grow from, right? I think that we're always growing. So I said, okay, I have room for improvement, but what am I going to improve? I don't know yet. It's been part of my tapestry of my podcast since the beginning. Like, would Jhae think this is better? Would he think this is improved? Did it go where he thought it was going to go? I swear, you've been part of my inner monologue about my podcast since the beginning. So even though I really wanted 5 stars, I wanted 5 stars. Like, who doesn't want 5 stars?
Right.
I wanted 5 stars, but I got what you were saying. I respected it. Like, clearly you listened to it. You didn't just phone it in like you're saying. And I appreciated that. And we did stay connected. And now here we are a year and a half or so later. And I was just recently on your podcast. Now you're on mine. And that's just amazing. So let's get into your plate, because if I was to see this license plate in a grocery store parking lot, I don't know if I would realize this was a vanity plate. So tell me the story behind VF1 SNSX.
So the story behind it, it's a really long story, but I guess that's why we're here on the podcast. In short, well, I just said it's a long story. I'm telling you the short. So VF is used in the military, and I'm not military. I've always kind of wish I'd had joined at some point. But when I was a teenager or preteen, I don't know, middle school, somewhere in that, there used to be a cartoon that I used to like a lot called Robotech. And it's actually, the people can't see it right now, but it's my car behind me on this Zoom call. And the fighter jet, they were called VFs, for variable fighters. Actually, in the cartoon, they were Veritech fighters, but the Japanese version was variable fighters. And what that meant was they could do more than, they weren't autonomous. They still needed a pilot, but they can change different modes to go from jet to kind of like a Guardian where they have legs, but you're still the pilot inside the cockpit. Or there's a Battleoid mode where it looks like a humanoid. It's a robot that's being piloted by a person. We've seen that with Pacific Rim and a bunch of those movies now. But the reason why it was in the cartoon is because the Earth was in an all-out global war, shocker, and a giant alien spaceship crashed in the middle of the ocean. Everyone stopped fighting. They went to investigate, and we find out that there were 50-foot tall aliens, humanoids, of course. What else? I guess, which, by the way, in these movies, every alien looks like a person. Like,
right.
How do we know they don't look like French fries with legs? Like, how do we know that? Right.
Well, because then you'd have to get French fries to play them in the movie, and we just have humans to play them in the movie.
Right. So these people, they were 50 feet tall. They were all blue or green, and they were preparing the United Earth government was preparing for their return one day. So that's why these robots existed. And obviously from that point, the cartoon went in a direction where the aliens came back, and there was this all-out war between the humans and the Zentradi. And you're supposed to be paying attention in class, right? But no one really does in middle school, especially a loser kid like me from the suburbs. You just stare out the window. It's like, man, if the Earth was being attacked right now, I wish I had a Veritech outside. I'd go out there and save everybody in the school. I'd be a hero. It just became like my favorite cartoon. And then
Yes.
once I got into high school, so right now I have an Acura NSX, 1997 Acura NSX, which is, for people who like cars, pretty iconic. But I saw my first one. This was years after I cared about Robotech, and I fell in love with the car. Super long story short, 20 years later, I got one. Super long story short. After several years of ownership, I used to go to these different car shows and I'd look at other people's cars because I'm an artist by trade, or I used to be. I thought I was going to go on to design cars, design shoes, design all sorts of stuff. And I would go to different car shows and I'd look at cars that were wrapped like fighter jets. And I'd get up close to them, I'd look at them, I'd go, oh, that's pretty cool, but I would do that different. Or, that doesn't look right. It's pixelated. Or, everything that flies has more than one type of screw. There's probably like 50 different, pieces of hardware. This is, if I ever did it, I'd do it better. Never had ever designed anything in Photoshop.
Right.
But you have if you have passion, then you have confidence, and your confidence drives your passion, and your final product is always better. So I was like, well, if I'm going to design a wrap for my cars, I wanted to change it up. Maybe I'll do a fighter jet. Sure, why not? And then I really started thinking. I asked my friends, I go, hey, what if I did a Robotech jet, a Veritech fighter, a VF, that's what they're called. And I'd be the leader. The leader is the Skull Leader, which is the VF1, and then the S is for Skull Leader. Now,
Okay.
historically speaking, traditional and real world war, they have the Jolly Rogers F-14s, the fighter jets from the 70s, and they had the skull and crossbones on the rear, and they kind of flew them. It was kind of like a victory squadron type of deal. There was a whole squadron of them, the VFSs. But of course, the cartoon did the adaptation. So I was like, okay, I'm going to design a VF1S and then NSX, which is my car. So ultimately, that's where VF1 SNSX, and there's the VF1A, VF1J, VF1D. But I have the VF1S, the Skull Leader.
That's awesome. So that makes perfect sense. And your podcast, the Hard Parking Podcast, the description of it, I think, is quite interesting. The non-automotive automotive podcast, where society and culture come first and the car talk comes second. You describe yourself to me earlier as, to somebody who's not a car guy like myself, you're a total car guy, but to a car guy, you're not really a car guy. So can you talk about, like, where do you fit in the whole tapestry of car guys?
Well, if I was better at it, I'd be pulling in Joe Rogan money probably. But I always describe the car person as, to people who aren't into cars at all, and you kind of are a little bit, because we had a conversation, and I think more people actually are than aren't, but they just kind of categorize car person as one type of person. And there's so many different, for any hobby you're into, there's so many. If you enjoy the outdoors, like, what does that really mean, right? There's so many different ways to enjoy the outdoors.
Sure.
And it's the same thing with cars, in my opinion. So I think, to be a car person, all you're doing is you're walking into the front door of a giant flea market, swap meet, shopping mall, where you have 300 different places you can go. And some of them, like clothing stores, you have 15 clothing stores, but they don't all sell the exact same thing. So you can be into import cars, but you could also hate the store next door. Hate's a strong word, but we're not all the same, but people think we all are. So I'm sort of the casual car person. I love cars when I was a little kid, teenager. I used to know everything about them. I don't really know much about them anymore. Now my family would probably say, yeah, right. But, as I tell my son when he calls me, I was like, look, like one day he said, hey, Dad, do you think AutoZone would have these brakes in stock? And I said, I don't know. Why don't you call them and ask them? Like, I don't know who has what in inventory. And I also tell people, look, I'm not an a certified mechanic here. I can do basic stuff, and that's the reason why those things exist. But, I still love cars, of course. I guess I know a lot about them, but not as much as people think I do. Like, I don't know what the newest hypercar is. I don't care. And there was one time that I did, but I don't care anymore. Like, I like cars, and I like $18,000 cars, and I like $1.8 million cars, kind of the same, because they're all kind of cool and unique. So that's kind of where I am. And with
Yeah.
the automotive, that's kind of a loose, I kind of stole that from one of my favorite podcasts, a sports podcast called the Dan Le Batard Show with Stugatz, because they're the non-sports sports show. And so they still cover sports, but they have a lot of fun. And when he has conversations, he has guests on, he likes to talk about both sides of the conversation. And I'm really big on that too, being both sides of the conversation. So my approach is, well, I'll get guests on and we'll talk about, their car a little bit, but then I want to know what they're into. Does traffic drive them crazy? Don't they hate it when, you're walking in the grocery store and someone's kid is, doing cartwheels down down aisle 6? Because those are the things that whatever drives me crazy probably drives everyone crazy. So it's kind of fun to share those moments with people. I'm like, you're not alone in thinking these people are nuts. And, what's going on TV? And what do you think about masks? What do you think about this? What do you think about, the Twin Cities, last year, obviously the George Floyd thing. And I think that people like the podcast because I try to offer a non-scripted perspective. I don't always go with what's the popular thing to say. I
Yeah.
just go with what I personally think. And if I don't have enough information, I'm not going to make a judgment. And then I try to pull that out of my guests. And then we talk about cars if there's time.
Yeah, I think you're the only person that has ever asked me during an interview about my car. And it was kind of fun because I had just bought a car and it's a car
Sure.
nobody's ever heard of. And so it was kind of fun to talk about my car with you. Even though I'm not a car person, I like having a car. I enjoy driving. So I can see what you're saying. And I like how you described it because you're right. I sort of have a car person description in my head. And it is just a certain type of person who cares a lot about cars, knows a lot about cars, talks a lot about cars, goes to car shows. But you're absolutely right. Just like anything, there are so many facets to that, just that one thing. How long have you had your podcast?
I think the Hard Parking podcast, I want to say was mid 2019. I have to think about it in the context of work because I wanted to. Well, I guess I wouldn't say had, but I have a friend who a few years ago said, "Hey, we should do a podcast together." And I was like, I don't really know, man. Like a year later, I said, "Hey, you still want to do that podcast?" I wanted something to do when I was on the road, which, by the way, you start recording your episodes from the hotel room every night. You don't really understand the controlled space and how different, your sound can be if you don't sit there and record all at once. Get home at the end of the week and you start editing it and you're like, God, this sounds terrible. So it's terrible. And that's just, my opinion on it, but so that was when I was working in New Jersey on my second tour is what I call it, because I'm on my third tour working for that client. So yeah, mid to late 2019.
Yeah, and you had a co-host. I've had podcasts in the past. I had 2 different podcasts with a co-host, and I have to say, when it didn't work for our schedules anymore, the podcast went away. But
Yeah.
you kept going. So tell me kind of the origin story a little bit, and how did it end up being just you and guests?
Yeah, and Brando is his name. He's a good guy. We don't talk that much. It's almost like a breakup where you're still cool with them. You take the kids on this day and I took the kids on that day. So we're not, going opposite directions when we see each other at parties type of relationship.
Right,
But
right.
he let me down and he knows it. And I never called him out on it. But our plan was to record, and you've probably gone through this exact thing. We're supposed to record like 5 or 6 episodes at once and just do it like a release. I go, okay, well, let's record one a week. And then 6 weeks from now, let's just go ahead and release them every week. And then we can figure out after, people's feedback, what we're going to do. By the 3rd episode, I felt like I was pulling teeth getting them on. And every week we had takeaways. Next week I was going to bring something to the table. You bring something to the table and you just got too busy. You didn't want to leave the house and people, And I decided I was kind of having fun doing it. And so probably I think it was, I want to say 8 or 9 episodes before he kind of went his separate way. I think it was the tacos in Hawaii was the last episode that he was on regularly. But somewhere around the fifth or sixth episode, I kind of pulled myself to the side and said, is this something I want to do? There's a very realistic chance that Brando's just going to fade out. He's kind of already fading out. Yeah, sure. I only want to get better at this. I'm having fun with this. And you never know where it's going to go because, like, I wouldn't say like many people because some people do, but like some people, we get into podcasting to kind of share a story, entertain people, have people share their stories. And for us specifically, it was like, man, if we get good at this, maybe we can get media passes into car events that we usually have to pay for, so that's why we kind of jumped into it. And that hasn't really happened yet, but it could. Like enough people know if I said, hey, I'm the host of the Hard Parking Podcast, especially local people. Oh, okay, yeah, we'll get you in for media. But that's kind of why I decided to do it. And then not on a really sad note, but we could talk about it a little bit later too. But, I was adopted when I was younger, went through several families before the adoption. Well, in my mind, right? You have your birth family, your foster, and then your adoptive family. But I think I've always felt like I needed to validate my existence in a way. And, I have a wonderful family now. I've been married. We just had our 17-year wedding anniversary, but I still feel like my wife tunes me out after 5 seconds. And kids don't listen to you because you're a parent. So you never have anything good to say. And it's like I started getting feedback from people that would respond to my podcast. I'm like, wow, these people are actually listening. I have an audience. I have, even if it's 10 people, I have people who care about what I say and offer me feedback. And so that's why I kept going, because it's almost therapeutic for me as well.
Well, I really think that all we really want is to feel heard. Not listened to, but like really heard.
Yeah.
So I can very much resonate with what you're saying. But you have quite a following now, right? Like I know your Instagram has like 15,000 followers. So you have a pretty good following for your podcast these days, right?
I have a decent following. I always, so that was one of Brando's things is like, hey, that's how he talks, like I got like, 50,000 followers and you got whatever. And man, that's going to be 60. This will be easy. And it's not, as it's not. And I kind of compare it to selling candy as a kid. If you're in the Cub Scouts or Girl
like door
Scouts,
to door,
door to door. And, your family's always going to buy your stuff and your next door neighbor. And once you get 2 or 3 streets over, you're going to find out if they like your candy or not. They're not being nice. That's the bottom line.
That's right.
And it's also, people always remember you on how they knew you last. Because I will see people, 15 years ago, I used to work at the bars in Michigan. I was a bouncer, believe it or not. And like, oh, Jay, how you doing? Good. What have you been up to? You married? Yeah, I'm great. Yeah. Hey, you still working? Or no, I'm not. Still bouncing. No, I'm in healthcare IT. And so, I say that to say that you have to go out and you have to find new people, because the people who already knew you don't know you for being a podcaster. And then when you start off with that big crowd, it's kind of, there's a pro and a con to it, right? The pro is you already have access to all these people who already have access to you. The con is if you're still trying to figure out what you even want to do and how you want to do it, those early episodes don't really sound like once you start getting into the groove. And so, yeah, so to answer your question, yeah, I have a big following of my page because of my car. I would say more so than the podcast. I tried to grow the podcast on my other page, and I said, you know what? I'm going to take advantage of the fact that I have enough followers that I can put actively, in my stories, whether I'm trying to help sell a product or promote my podcast or promote somebody else's podcast. And so I just shifted everything over to my car page, and people could take it or leave it.
Yeah, and I love that. And it's a very active page. You do something really fun. I'd love to know the origin story of this. One Drink Wednesdays. I need to know about this.
One Drink Wednesday is a lot of fun, and you need to jump on there with us. So Wes Tankersley is another podcaster that I met around the same time as you, actually. And, we kind of pulled over into like a little mastermind group. There was probably 6 or 7 of us that broke off from some of these other, crazy groups, as you know. And I think through the pandemic era, at least the first part of it, because we're still in it, you just start connecting with people and leaning on people. And, our daily conversations became less about podcasting. I mean, we were like, what can we do and stuff. But, it's 4 of us, a guy named Brian Sales, and even 5 with Jason B. Godoy had his own thing. And then one guy, Zach, who lives over in Germany. He's a professional baseball player over there. And so we all just kind of built like this mastermind group. And then, Wes and I were like, hey, we should all hang out one day. He came down here for spring training. We went out, had a couple pops. He played golf. And then since then, we're like, we'll just do a virtual drink, one drink Wednesday. And we describe it as every Wednesday at, right now at 7 o'clock Pacific time, we'll get on Instagram Live. You have your drink, I have my drink. And it's like meeting at the same bar. And if people join, they can come up on stage with us. If not, maybe the only ones in the bar, and that's okay. And that's where One Drink Wednesday came from. And we have a lot of fun. Sometimes we get some pretty cool guests, whether they're just random everyday people or kind of celebrity status.
Yeah, I noticed you have people that are not planned guests join you for the conversation.
Yeah.
And I thought that was fun. I haven't seen that before, where you have a planned thing, but then other people can pop in and join you for the discussion. And I thought that was really unique and cool. And it sort of reminds me of how you can watch a TV show or a movie together on like a Netflix or whatever, and you're all in your own houses, but it's simul streaming or something
Oh yeah. Yep. Those
with
watch
your
party things.
family. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it sort of reminded me of that, but in a much, much cooler, hipper social media sort of way.
I don't think I've ever been myself, cool and hip. All 3 of them, I don't think has ever been in the same sentence at the same time.
See, I think that's so funny because I find you very cool and hip, especially your voice. You have just the perfect podcast voice with that really just amazing timbre.
Baby.
Yeah. I don't, mine's a little on the higher range, but yeah, I just enjoy your voice, just listening to your voice. So that's awesome. So what's in store for you? You have a great podcast, you have a great following, you're doing some great stuff, but clearly if you look at things like always improving, always looking at what's next. So what's next? What do you have in the works?
I got to tell you that usually when I'm looking at things, if the podcast numbers are down, or I never run out of content, which I think is pretty fortunate. And I mean, you really wouldn't either, with your vanity plates. But I have to sit back and evaluate it, say, okay, what could I be doing better? What should I be doing better? Where have I let myself down? And I think, one of the things is I could be more organized. I think I mentioned on the last conversation that I ordered a desktop calendar, which I have right in front of me at this time.
Excellent. Congratulations.
Thank you. I would love to get my website up finally. It's almost a year past due, and I'm working on that because it's one of those things where we have to ask ourselves, when things aren't going exactly the way that we imagine they go, which is most things in our lives, what could we have done differently, or what could we be doing better to help that? Because at the end of the day, if you do everything that you set out to do and you've given it your hardest, your best, does anyone ever say given it your hardest? If you've given it your best, or what you think is your best, and it's still not where you want, at least you could say, I gave it my best. But if you haven't given it your best, it's not where you want, then there's no really, you have to look at yourself. What could I be doing better? And there's things I could be doing better. There's things I don't do now that I did last year. It's like, okay, well, I've dropped those habits, and you can tell in the numbers. I'll have friends that say, well, I got 15 downloads today. I'm like, oh, I have no idea how many downloads I got today. And I have no idea how many followers I've lost on Instagram. I just have to keep moving forward. And I decided to, even with Instagram, it's like, look, most of that's because of my car. I stopped caring about that 8 or 9 months ago and started posting pretty much whatever I want. I mean, I'm still staying on brand, but before it was just all my car. And now it's reels. It's, One Drink Wednesday. It's, no one's going to do for you like you're going to be able to do for you. Really, it's just continuing to grow. And as far as the podcast goes, just continuing to work down that long list that I have of people. And I was really lucky. I think I was lucky. I think it's lucky. I don't know if it's fate, but one of my podcast idols, I was able to have a conversation with the other day. And it was one of those pipe dream type of deals. Like, hey, I would love to have this person on the show, but they were on the show.
Your
So that's kind of one
dream
of those things.
guests.
Yeah, one of my dream guests. That's the thing they always ask you, right? Like, who are your dream guests?
Yeah.
And so I think that's good for the soul, I think.
Yeah.
And then
And
I'm
finally,
involved in so
Trista
much stuff.
Polo agreed to
Finally,
be on
yes.
your no,
I didn't want to have to use your name, but there's so much truth to that. But I'm involved in so many things, and then it's one of those things where people are like, "Holy crap, Jay! Like, how do you do it?" And from the outside world, it probably looks like I'm busy all the time, and maybe I am. But again, I can do more for my brand because I don't count my regular 9 to 5 job as being busy. I mean, it is busy. We've talked about that before. Sometimes busier than I ever planned for it to be. But one thing I learned in the pandemic era is, I was out of work for 5 months, and you have to find other stuff with the whole paradigm shift and how the world is performing business. You have to find other things to maybe sublet your ambitions. Maybe you may make some money off it, or maybe you don't have to work as hard at one job, and you can even your work-life balance off if you have something else that's fun to do that helps pay for stuff, I guess.
Yeah. Well, the millennials today, they always keep telling me you need 7 income streams to be a millionaire today.
Oh.
I don't know where I don't know where they all read it, but they've all said I've had 8 or 10 different millennials tell me this very true, very important fact. They have nothing to back it up, but that's what they keep saying. They must have all heard it on the same podcast.
Joe Rogan or something.
Yeah, probably. You said that earlier that you could maybe have been a Joe Rogan if you knew more about cars. Is that an aspiration of yours to be one of the top podcasters, huge money makers, huge following?
I kind of said it in jest, but you kind of dug to the root of it. I think we just want to be heard. And one thing that I tell other podcasters just getting started, I go, look, don't even look at your numbers. But if you're going to look at them, think about it as you're doing a weekly, just say Bible study or book club. Every week you do a book club on Tuesdays, and you have 13 people that show up every week. So if you decide not to do the book club, those 13 people you've just let down. They're going to show up at that door, and the door is going to be locked. Some days you might have 10 people because 2 or 3 people could make it. Some days you may have 25 people because they invited their friends. But as long as you have people showing up to your book club, then keep doing it. As long as you're having, sure, if this thing blew up and I was getting thousands and thousands and thousands of downloads per episode, it would feel kind of cool. But it's only cool to the point to where you can actually make some real money and retire off of it, or retire off of your day job. Then it's something special. But until it gets to that point, just keep having fun. And I'd like to see the growth. So instead of going, and I do more than 13, but if it's 13 today and tomorrow, then next week, I want to see 14. And I had some of those type of goals for this year. And I think across the board, or maybe it's just me and I'm trying to find a way to make it sound better. But, across the board, I think that listening in general is down. And, I switched to a weekly show to see, because that's one of the things out there. Like, we should do it every week. Statistics show, and these are probably the millennials with the seven streams of income.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, statistics show that the average person listens to 20 minutes. So if you do one every week, then your numbers will go to the roof. Well, I have more listeners on my longer episodes than I do my short ones, which, every other week. So
I've heard that too, that the longer ones actually get more listeners than the shorter ones, which seems counterintuitive.
It does. Yep.
To me. But I think that 20 minutes comes from how long does it typically take you to drive somewhere? And that number's out the window because a lot of people haven't been driving. But I think that social media platforms like Clubhouse really started that audio, that listening where you're on there for just, I don't know if you're on Clubhouse, but when you go on there, you can get on there for hours and hours and hours. And that's listening time that you'd be spending listening to audiobooks or podcasts or whatever else you used to listen to.
Are you so? I mean, you brought up Clubhouse. What is your thought? You know what? I'm going to save that. I'm going to save that one for the end. Yeah, I'm going to say
Oh, we
that.
just got a new question.
Yeah, we just got a new question. Yeah, we got a new question.
So you mentioned that you were going to be an artist, a
Yeah.
graphic designer, it sounds like, for sneakers and things. What happened?
You know, it was I'd said the passion word earlier, and you know, I when I put my mind to it, I'm pretty good with the pencil and the pen, or I was, you know, and it's all relative. And this is how I always explain this, because you know, when you're in middle school and you're one of the artists, when you're in elementary school, you're one of the artists, and then you go to a magnet school. That's what I went to, and then you're in a room full of other artists. You're no longer the best person in class. There's people that are just naturally talented. They could draw you out of it, you know, draw the hell of it. And then you get to high school and it's more a little more dispersed. It's not focused anymore. So then, you know, everyone's thought was, you know, Jay, you have all this talent. You're going to go on to be a great artist. But I, not to put like my parents or anything, because I didn't do very good in high school. And it's funny because I didn't skip class either. Really, I just sucked at everything except for art. And I just thought I was going to go to art school, and I never knew anything about it. I just thought like a scholarship. I just thought scholarships were just given. I had no idea. And then my parents probably didn't really, you know, and probably wasn't the most fun teenager to deal with because of my history. So, you know, I probably shut them out or they gave me my wishes or whatever. But I always thought I was going to be an artist on some capacity. And I was getting a little off here, but what the point is, I liken it to football or sports. You could be all city, and then you go to high school, or you can be all city junior high. You could be a star of your high school football team. You're lucky if you can get in a JUCO. You're really lucky if you can land in Division 1 college. And if you can do that, you're one of 105 people on the team. Chances are you're not making it to the NFL. But everybody who's not athletically gifted thinks you're just the best person in the world. And it's all relative. And I think with art, once I got to art school, I learned how to draw a little better. But I quickly realized that, you know, it was never my artistic skill. It was my focus and my passion for whatever it was I was drawing. And, you know, I went to a school of, I went for industrial design, Kendall College of Art and Design in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And everyone there kept telling me, you know, what are you doing here? You need to be in an art center, or you need to be over to CCS in Detroit, because I kept drawing cars. So first off, I was in the wrong school. But then I realized my gift was more communication than pure skill. Because when I'd get up there and do a presentation, you know, we had people come over from companies and they were ready to buy my product. And I hate sales too. I'm not a salesperson, but there's like a certain conviction you have when you believe in something, I think is what it really is.
Yeah, for sure.
And, you know, I decided that I don't want to you learn about the design process. I don't want to spend 8 to 9 months designing the next ergonomic coffee cup. There's nothing in there. You know,
That sounds so boring.
exactly, because that's what industrial design really is, you know?
Right.
And that's the design process. I go, I feel like I have whatever it is, I have something else to offer the world. So then I realized I really wasn't that good of an artist. I was okay, but I think pure art wasn't my calling. But every once in a while I get an opportunity to, you know, use that skill. And I mean, like the VF1 SNSX, I designed every square millimeter of that wrap. And I took a year to learn how to use Photoshop while I did it. And I'll probably never design another wrap again. But it's validating when, you know, you go to a huge show called SEMA, SEMA, and it's, I think, the world's largest aftermarket manufacturing event. It's in Las Vegas. Hundreds of thousands of people come. But when you're in SEMA and you have people coming up to you that's what they do for a living, design wraps and things, and they say, wow, this is really good. This is amazing, especially for somebody who's never done it before. The validation is pretty cool.
Yes.
You know, so every once in a while you get an opportunity to do stuff with your skills, whatever they are. So, you know, pursue those. I mean, I'll design stuff every once in a while still, but it's not my bread and butter, and I knew it wasn't going to be. But some cool stuff has happened because of the VF1 SNSX, though.
Well, I'd like to hear more about that, but I wanted to just underline what you were saying. I thought it was so key. When you were drawing something that you were passionate about, you were an amazing artist, but it was your passion for the thing you were drawing
Yeah.
and not the skill that was being channeled there. So cars, you did amazing. Wrapping your car, you did amazing. But, you know, the coffee cup or whatever, like who cares? Not interested at all. So maybe your skill wasn't there. So I think that passion that was there in some things and missing in others, I think that's just so key.
You know what
Yeah.
it was is people would commission me to draw stuff for them. And we're talking like high school. Well, no one pays anything. I'll give you $30 for that drawing that you spent 8 hours, doing. But I would look at some of those.
Yeah,
And
right.
I was like, wow, that's pretty good, but it's not that good. Why? Oh, because I don't care about the Dallas Cowboys, So yeah, I realized that within myself. That, I wasn't sitting at an art show and staring across at the first place person and said, well, I got second place. I suck. It was more or less sitting back and watching the things that weren't judged, and I was judging my own work.
Yeah, for sure. So you were going to say a little bit more about where it's led. Can you share more about that?
Oh, the car. I keep looking over because I have it as a wallpaper. I commissioned someone to do like a fun little drawing of it. But the car was in a magazine, which as for a car person, that's like our thing. It's like, oh wow. I mean, I didn't make the magazine cover, which is really cool, but I had a cool article inside of Pass Mag, which is Performance Audio and Sound magazine. But I was in a show called Anime Expo in 2018. So I wrapped the car in 2017 for SEMA. I got an invite from a random person on Instagram. I know it sounds like catfishing or something, but the person did not have a very big account, but they had mentioned this show called Anime Expo, which is a big deal for the anime guys, the anime crowd in Anaheim. And so after exchanging a few, conversational bits, I said, okay, I'll put my car in the show. And I did. So I was at Anime Expo and I was one of two cars that were there that year. They had the panels. They had a bunch of panels there speaking about all sorts of different things. Like this is a big deal. So Harmony Gold, which a lot of people who are into Macross, which is the Japanese version of Robotech, hate. They're the studio that brought Robotech to the United States. So that's what I watched when in the early to mid 80s. That's what inspired the daydreams of the VF1 Snsx. They had a panel there, and I had communicated with them online a few times. I sat in the back of the room during the panel, and they're like, "Hey, there's even a guy here who has an NSX, based on our cartoon." I was like, "It's me." So they came and they checked out the car, and the creative director sat in the car, and he just loved it. He loved it. The CEO of the company loved it. They invited me out to their studios. They said, "Hey, one day when you come to Los Angeles, come out to the studio. You can bring your family. We'll only bring a couple people." And so we did that. So I got to tour the very studio of the thing I used to watch in the 80s. And to me, it was awesome.
That's like full circle.
It's 100%. We're like on the same wavelength there. That's exactly how I described it. It's like coming full circle.
Yeah.
So not only did I get my dream car, but I also am driving around in my fighter jet. And I got the attention of the company that inspired it all. And that's not even the only thing. There's there's the companies in China that are always making stuff, right? One day I'm sitting there on Facebook and a friend messaged me and he says, "Hey, did you know about this?" Sends me a link to eBay. Some company is making little miniatures of my car, like exact miniatures of my car. Had all my decals on there. It's like they shot it with a shrink gun. Has the license plate VF1 Snsx on it. And so I was like, "Oh, heck no."
Where's your residual checks? Where's the royalties?
Well, here's the deal. Because a lot of people said, well, welcome to getting screwed. You should be honored that someone's, ripping you off. I'm like, well, there's a pro and a con to it. Number one, I'm not a major corporation. I'm just a regular person. Number two, man, wouldn't it be neat if I could look back one day and see all these cars? That was my stuff. I did that. And number three, I wasn't screwed because I was in good with Harmony Gold, which is known for being incredibly litigious. They will sue the pants out of anybody who uses any of their intellectual property. I had their markings on my car, but it was a fan thing and my relationship with them. They didn't care. And I talked to the guy the creative director, and he said, "Hey, let us know what you want us to do. You want us to wipe
That's
it off the
awesome.
planet?" Yeah, because they're like, they're in China, you can't reach them. I go, hold my beer. And I have actually a pretty good Hollywood friend. His name is Joseph Gatt, and he sent me a message and said, "Hey, I want to talk to you about your car. Let's turn this into an opportunity." And I said, "Okay." I gave him a call, and we talked for 45 minutes, and we were kind of thinking the same thing. He said, "You know what? Instead of asking for money, how about use this as an opportunity for branding?" I said, "Well, this is what I'm thinking. How about they put my name on the car, so I will forever have credit? I want them to give me a few of them so I can give them away to family and friends. And then I want one. I don't want to buy my own car." And so I was able to work out a deal with them, and it's on every package. I said, "Hey, I want to help design the final product of the car. I want to design the packaging. I want it to say Jhae Pfenning's VF1 SNSX. I want my Instagram on there, which used to be NA2NSX, but now it's just my name. And I'm going to put a signature plate on there, a little plaque." And so I sent them exactly everything I wanted. They complied. They made it.
That's
And
awesome.
they're out there. If someone goes on eBay and they search Jhae Pfenning, they're going to find that car probably. It's actually one of two cars. So I actually have two miniatures that kind of have the same story. Somebody wanted to copy it, and we turned it into an opportunity. And I've made money off of them because I've bought some for cost and I've turned around and sold them. And my thing is, hey, you could buy them from these people out there that don't know me. I get nothing from it. Or you can buy it from me and I can make a couple bucks. But what I did is I turned it into a kind of a fun marketing thing. I autographed all mine and numbered them. And so
Oh, that's awesome.
people were just buying them. And so right now I actually
Yeah.
have 3 miniature cars out there. One's a pen that's worth a lot of money, but it has nothing to do with me. It's because the maker of the pen really wasn't popular at the time. And there were so few of them. Now he's popular and he sells thousands of them in 5 minutes. There was 100
Oh.
made of mine, and he only had 20. The 80 I kept and gave to family and friends and sponsors. But now those pens are worth over $1,000, which is
Oh
crazy.
my gosh.
And it's not because of me, it's just because it's a limited edition pen. But at the end of the day, it's still my car on that pen. And so I've told everyone, because of all those things that have happened, I'm kind of playing with house money. So I'm okay with it. And I still have more stuff coming out with the car, and the car's not even wrapped anymore. It's just black sitting in the garage chilling.
Oh, is that right? It's not wrapped anymore?
Yep, it's just in the garage.
Wow, that's such a cool story. I'm so glad I pulled that thread. Yeah.
And I mean, I would have been screwed if these people didn't want to work with me. I could have got them shut down, but I knew there was super fans out there of my car, not me, of the car. And so I felt like if I had these things wiped off the planet, then everybody would lose at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So as long as we're able to work together, and I got more coming out. So it's pretty cool. So now the VF1
I
SNSX
love that.
actually means something even more. So yeah, that's my VF1 SNSX story.
That's beautiful. That's so, so good. So there's another thread I wanted to pull. You had mentioned earlier that you were adopted, and
Mhm.
then you made a comment about your parents and art school and scholarships and things. I'd love to hear a little bit about your coming of age story. Anything you want to share about that?
I I think being adopted, and I'm 45 now. So I had a closed adoption, which for most people who are under the age of 30, that's not even a thing. You can go and meet your parents and meet your family, and that just wasn't a deal in my day. And I don't look anything like my parents or my brother who has Asperger's. And, when you're trying to find your identity, you get in a lot of trouble, punching walls, acting out, you know. And I think I was such a handful. And thinking back, I wasn't that bad, but this is my parents' first rodeo. My mom's from a small town, my dad's from the military. And I think, mm, I remember my father had told me that, I think when I was in ninth grade, I told them to stop telling me what to do and let me make my own decisions. And then so they did, which I think was kind of a mistake looking back, because
In ninth grade, yeah, I would agree.
Yeah. I mean, I turned out okay, but I don't know if it's them just letting me make my own decisions. The reason why I didn't know about anything that could have advanced my life immediately after high school, or it's because maybe they just didn't know what to do to advance my life. So I got in a little bit of trouble, nothing too bad, but just things that kind of derailed, you know, and I started hanging out with some of the wrong crowds. But I've always been kind of a curious person. And so there were times when I knew I wasn't hanging around with the best people, but there were people who accepted me, and I was just kind of curious to see what would happen. But I had one or two scares. One time I just bought a brand new car. It's my first brand new car, 1998 Acura GSR, entry level car, iconic car. And we were driving to the very bad part of South Dallas. Now one could argue all of South Dallas is bad, but at the time I don't think all of South Dallas was bad. But we drove around a corner, and my friend stuck his arms out the window. This was at night, and he said something, "Hey, what's up, mother beep?" And all because his friends were there, but he was just kind of surprising them. Trista, these people came running from all different directions, and they had guns. And I hit him. I said, "Hey, man, you better say something." Like that was my very first, like, "Hey, yo, you better say something."
Right.
And he's like, "Hey, it's just me, it's me, it's me." And they're like, "Oh man, you can't play with us like that."
Right.
What had happened was, I guess earlier that night, someone drove by and was shooting at the house.
Oh my
And so we
gosh.
got out of the car and we were just hanging out because we're still knuckleheads, right? But I remember thinking, I was kind of sitting back and kind of looking at the situation. Every time a car would come around the corner, everyone would run and duck behind something. I didn't even have a gun. So I thought, man, how am I going to explain this car getting shot? Maybe that's a car guy thinking there, right? Not if
Right.
if
Right.
if one of my friends gets killed, how am I going to explain that? No, I was like, man, if this brand new car gets shot, how the hell am I going to explain that? Oh, and we only hung out a few more times. Those are still my friends, but only one of the guys I'm in contact with, but we never had a falling out, but I stopped putting myself in that situation. I said, you know what, this isn't it. I mean, I'm fighting fire
Yeah.
here. I got to get
Yeah.
myself out of this situation. And so I did. I removed myself, and then a few months later I applied for college. I didn't get a scholarship, but I got accepted to the school. And that was my one opportunity to get out of the state, get out of Dallas, and just learn, move somewhere else. But I want to bring up something. I'm supposed to be a good artist. I was two drawings away from being accepted into an art gallery at the ballpark in Arlington where the Texas Rangers used to play. I think they've torn it down. And the reason why the two pieces that I needed couldn't be used is because I wrote the players' names on there, kind of in a stencil. One was Michael Jordan, one was Scottie Pippen. And since it actually said it on there, then it became a rights issue. Even though one was wearing Nikes and it said Chicago Bulls and like none of that, I guess in sports art, there's like a gray area, but I had crossed the gray area. So I was that close. So when I got the letter from the college, one of the things I'll never forget it, it said, after carefully reviewing your artwork, we have decided that, you're not eligible for a scholarship, but we'd still like to offer you admission to our school, an opportunity. And at first I was kind of like, what? You guys have never even seen my art. This is BS. Screw you guys. But sitting back, it's like, okay, well, this is my first opportunity. It's the first school I applied for. I want to get out and see the world, go out and see the rest of the United States. And so I took that opportunity. So I say that to say that, we're always going to have those semi rejections. But like Jim Rohn had said, the same wind blows on us all. It's the setting of your sail that determines your outcome. And so I chose to set my sail to go right to school, even though I didn't get what I thought I deserved at the time. And at the end of the day, I didn't do illustration anyway. But, it's kind of one of those things where I just kind of came of age and decided to get my life together. And, here I am now, many years later, not drawing anything,
And still having a good life anyway.
still having a pretty good life. Yes.
Yeah. So I think this is the perfect time to ask you the question I like to ask all of my guests. How has self-worth played a role in your journey?
I think self-worth has played a role in my journey because there's that thing called pride, which never hurts. It only never helps, it only hurts. But it's coming from the beginnings that I came from, rejections, not ever having really the girlfriend that you want growing up, you know, not really being in the in crowd, not being in the sports. You feel like you have to prove that you belong here. And it's not being fake it's not getting where you fit in, but it's like, look, that has, I think, driven me to work harder to be known. I've always said with my jobs, it's like, look, I'm not interested in being employee number 88. I want to be Jhae Pfenning, for better or for worse. And I want to do my job the best that I can, to where if I'm sick tomorrow, people notice. And on the flip side of that is, it's easy to say, well, you just have to be the star of the room. You have to be under the spotlight. No, it is not that. I don't like the spotlight, regardless of what my car looks like and everything that's kind of come along with it. That's actually, in its
Right.
purest form, an expression of my art. That's all that really is, expression of my art, my passion. When I come to a car show, I will park my car and I will run. I don't stand there and say, hey, does anybody have any questions? Can I help you with anything? And there's nothing wrong with that person, but that's not me. And I would always say that I would love to be the person, the dependable one, the one that helps, Trista Polo win the Lifetime Achievement Award for whatever reason. But I don't want to be on stage with Trista Polo. I'll be over there with a smirk on my face, like, yeah, we did that. I mattered to Trista. And to me, that's what matters to me the most. And so those are the type of things. It's just, and I guess it comes back to the family and feeling no one ever listens to me here, but the podcast people do. So I know I matter to my family. I mean, I obviously do.
Of
But
course, after 17 years, you don't
yeah,
stay in a marriage for 17 years by accident.
yeah,
Let me
yeah,
tell you.
yeah. But even with the kids, and everything, it's just, and that's what keeps me going. That's what keeps me going is proving that I belong, proving that this podcast is, should be up there based on feedback. And what can I do? Again, back to me, what can I do to get it to where it needs to be? And if it never gets there, I'm fine with it, as long as I didn't sit back and just wonder what happened, knowing that I could have done more.
I love that answer. So I have to ask, because of how the whole conversation today started, how did you feel about what I shared about your review and everything it kind of created for me in my podcast journey?
It felt like I made a difference. I say when we do our charities, not to pull on another thread, but make a difference or don't. I could tell you what you want to hear. This is the world's best and it's really freaking good. This is the world's best podcast. I don't know how it's, not, getting 1 million downloads. This is so awesome. You're the best. Don't change a thing,
Right,
because
right.
I know I need to change things. So if I need to change things, somebody out there has to change something, whether it's, audio, maybe it's fixing my room, so, I, to know that you've held on to that and used me for better or for worse, sounds like for better. That's kind of something to strive for. That's freaking cool.
Yeah. And it is for better. So anything else you want us to know about you? Because this is about you. Obviously, it starts with your plate, and I love everything you shared. Is there anything else about you want us to know?
I'm very even keeled, and a lot of people see that as either not approachable or not caring or uptight. But I told you before, and I'll share it with the listeners, that I also have another vehicle with another vanity plate. So there's a little bit of dark humor to me, but in a good way, deadpan-y. And I think that plate shows it to people. So do you mind if I share that with the listeners, and what that plate is in that
How could you
car?
not share it?
That's what this is, right? Plate
Yes.
story. So I have, for us car people, we have our cars and we have our daily drivers. And so my daily driver is an Infiniti SUV. It's an FX50S, which they only made for a few years, and Infiniti decided to change it to QX70S. But what's unique about it is it's a 5.0 motor, which that vehicle is the only Infiniti that ever had this 5.0 V8 motor. And it's the S is it. So these cars are known for their bulbous shape. And so my license plate is my fat X. So people think it's a relationship thing, but no, it's
Right.
my fat X. So I have a lot of fun with it.
That's just such a great plate because, of course, people are going to make assumptions about the
Of course,
terrible
yeah.
person you used to be with, that you would put that on your
Or the terrible
license.
person I am
Or the
because calling
terrible
my ex
person you
fat.
are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all
Like,
about the
what
car.
did they do to you?
And both of my cars are technically X's because it's NSX and FX50. So this is the fatter one.
Right.
That's my fat
That's the
X.
fatter. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the fatter of the two X's. I love that. That's awesome. Well, I like to turn the tables and see if you have a question for me. So what's your question for me, Jay?
My question for you, thank you for asking. What is your thought of Clubhouse in general? Because you had mentioned it earlier, and I've gone back and forth, and I found some rooms I liked, and then I found some rooms where all they're doing is giving each other high fives and telling everybody that they don't bring into the conversation to follow the people on stage. And I have these notifications, and it's the same people. I'm like, geez, don't these people have anything else better to do? It's so and so is on stage, so and so is talking. I'm like, what the heck? So I've kind of gone full circle, I think, on Clubhouse. At first, I wasn't sure about it. Then I kind of liked it. Now I'm a little unsure about it. What is your thought about Clubhouse?
I have so much to say about Clubhouse. And it's funny you said, oh, that's what I'm going to ask you about. And I've sort of had it in the back of my mind. I'm like, wow, I really do have a lot to say. So I'll just start at the beginning. I found out about Clubhouse from a friend who was on this thing I'd never heard of, but she was on it like 80 hours a week. Like every time I wanted to have a conversation with her, she had to work around her Clubhouse time. So I finally asked her, like, can I get in on this? Because I've always felt like if I could find the next big social media before it was big,
Right.
then I could do something with it. I keep getting involved in these social media platforms way at the end. I'm trying to catch up and learn everything everybody already knows. I'm just trying to still figure out Instagram. Now you want me to do lives and reels. I'm so overwhelmed and confused that I just, a confused mind can't make a decision. So I end up doing not enough or nothing. Here's this thing that's new. I can get in, quote unquote, ground floor. So she adds me on Clubhouse. And I'm like, I do not understand this. You go into a room and it's a bunch of people talking about themselves and each other. Every single profile I read. Now, this was in January. So it wasn't right at the beginning, but it was pretty, it was pretty new. It was Apple only, it was invite only, it was waitlist only. And every single profile, they were billionaires who had a zillion followers and had been a TEDx speaker and had 16 books on bestseller. And I'm like, I am in over my head. Like these people are all way cooler, way more successful, way bigger deals than I am. I'm just this, entrepreneur who is, living my best life over here, doing my best that I can. But, my friend, I know her off Clubhouse. And I figured if she deserves to be there, then so do I. I even coach her on some stuff. I train her on some things. So if she's got something to say, I must have something to say too. So I never dove in as deeply as other people have. And I don't have 5,000 followers. I probably have 650-ish followers on Clubhouse, which is a lot.
600 more than I think I have.
Well, considering that people only follow you after they've heard you speak and liked what you say and would listen to you again. So a follower on Clubhouse is a lot bigger deal, not to minimize other platforms, but people don't just follow back on Clubhouse as much as they do on other platforms. So I started a club for my company, which is I Woke Up Awesome. I believe that we all woke up and just as we are, we're already perfect. There's nothing to fix or change about you. I think that is a message that is not talked about enough. I think self-worth is the core of everything. So if you have a low self-worth, the goals that you're creating and the dreams you have and the classes you take and the books you read, they will all be diminished if your self-worth is low because you'll sabotage your own existence, your own results. So I think that message deserves to be talked about. And I think Clubhouse is a great place to do that, because I don't know if I could take on another podcast, to be honest with you.
Right.
One at a time at this point is about all I can muster. So we have some rooms throughout the week, but I have to say, I don't spend as much time in other people's rooms. And maybe that sounds like egotistical or elitist or whatever, but I have been in so many rooms where either they've been around for a long time and there's this amoeba personality that's been created by the people that are always in there, and I'm not part of it. And so it's
Yeah.
like this whole community that I don't understand. They're talking about things that they've been discussing over it's like going into a TV show at the last season before it gets canceled, and you missed all the previous seasons and you have no
Right.
idea who these people are, what's going on.
They all
That's
know
how
each
those
other.
bigger rooms feel.
Yeah. Yep. 100%.
And then I have to talk about this one room. So I went in this one room. I liked the topic that she was talking about. You had to like agree before you went into this room that you would not promote yourself, your business, whatever. Like, it was to be sharing information only, no promotion. And I swear every other thing she said was promoting herself and her course and sign up for this. And I'm like, I don't understand. Did you forget about the pop-up that you made me agree to
Right.
before I came in this room? Or are you so like one-sided that it has to be all about you to be in this room? And she invited me to her club and followed me on Instagram and all this other stuff. But I was like, that's just not the vibe that I'm into. But here are some cool things about the experience on Clubhouse. First of all, I am connected in my company with a big influencer. She has lots of followers, a very successful blog. She's a billionaire, like literally legit, not exaggerating.
Awesome. Yeah.
And I got onto Clubhouse and I said, where is she? This is her venue. This is where why isn't she here? And, at the time you had like 5 invites, so you were hoarding them.
Yep.
Like, you couldn't just give them to anybody. And I'm like, she has people on here that know her. Why hasn't she been in? She needs to be here. So I reached out and I said, hey, do you want to be on Clubhouse? And she said, yes. So if you go to her profile, she was nominated for membership by me.
That's awesome.
I think that's super cool.
Yep.
The second cool thing about Clubhouse, I was in some random room. There were a zillion people in the audience. And I don't remember what they were talking about, but I was listening. Next thing I know, Tony Robbins is in the audience listening to the people on stage. And that was the coolest evening of a playing field I've ever seen. Like, some random person I've never heard of is talking about some random thing that was mediocre at best. And there's Tony Robbins in the audience listening, not calling himself up on stage, not being invited, just being in the audience, listening to whatever they had to say and getting whatever he got out of it. I just thought that was amazing. And then the third cool thing about Clubhouse, and this is the last thing I'll mention, is I got to listen to Elon Musk in his very first appearance on Clubhouse, which was at like 1 a.m, because it was Pacific time at 10 p.m. or something. My husband wanted to hear it. I wanted to hear it. So he stayed up and woke me up, because I'm definitely not a night owl. And we just listened to Elon Musk on Clubhouse, just sharing and talking and being interviewed. So that's my answer about Clubhouse. I would love to hear your reaction to what I shared, because I was sort of all over the place.
No, I mean, to be fair, Clubhouse is all over the place, because the 1, 2, 3 that you really like about it, I will agree, are the best things about it. I mean, you have access, you're in the same room as people, but there's so many bad rooms. There's so many rooms of people trying to sell you stuff. The latest Instagram algorithm is just released. Come in here and we'll tell you all about it. Send me a DM and I'll share it with you. And you're like, hey, what's up? And they're like, hey, go to here and sign up for my. It's like, screw you. Nope, not clicking unfollow, block. But I've been in a few rooms that were kind of fun. And one of my favorite rooms unfortunately fizzled out. It was called the Podcast Lunch Hour. And there was
Yeah, that was a great room.
You saw, yeah. Those, I mean,
Yeah.
I still keep in contact with some of those guys.
Yeah.
And I follow all the regulars, and they even let me like substitute moderate it one day. But yeah, but now it got moved to every Wednesday, and now it's just not going on at all, even on Wednesday. And that's the one room that I kind of look forward to because it was a smaller group and everybody was bouncing ideas off each other. It kind of reminded me of, going through this last year in the pandemic era where there was just this rebirth of all these new podcasters. And then usually I just miss some. And there's a few car ones that I get into, but it's so few and far. And I'm just curious on, what the future of that platform is, because you're right. It's just another thing. And there's some excellent networking opportunities, but then there's just a lot of people that just kind of want to sell you their stuff and you have to kind of sift through it. And I don't know. I mean, Clubhouse is something you can jump in and out of. I don't do I call it the TikTok machine just to make myself sound like I'm really old. But, that's another platform that people just love. And I was talking to a guy in the local scene the other day and he goes, "Oh man, I'm just needed a few more to get 3 million followers." I'm like, "Holy crap, dude. That's pretty cool for you." Like with my personality, I would suck on TikTok. I can't be silly. It's just me, and just me in a 20-second clip is absolutely not very interesting. So.
Well, I like what you said about the podcast platform piece, because that is the fourth thing I do like about Clubhouse is if you're part of a niche, like the podcaster community. I'm currently writing a novel. You can find people in your tribe really easily because there are clubs and there are rooms and you can go and just be part of that conversation. I don't have anybody around here to talk to about podcasts. I wouldn't even know where to find them. But on Clubhouse, I can just go hang out with podcasters in podcast rooms. I'm sad to hear that the lunch hour thing isn't happening anymore.
It might come and go, but it's been struggling lately. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, because there were 3 guys. I'm remembering Tanner, and I'm forgetting the 2 other guys' names, but they actually created a company, the 3 of them, and they created a website and a community and all kinds of training and stuff. And I thought that lunch hour was part of their situation, but I don't really know what happened with it.
Yeah, I haven't been around long enough, and I mean, it could be the same lunch hour. There could be like 30 lunch hours. That's Clubhouse.
That's true. Well, I have had an amazing time, and I appreciate the extra time because we've gone over our typical hour that was in your calendar. So thank you for that. And in the spirit of longer episodes, get more listeners, I think I'm going to leave this long and see what happens.
Oh, no. Oh, no. Yeah, it's been a pleasure being on here.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed our conversation. And I'll continue to strive to see how I can improve, because, it's true. Like, what else can you do? What's next? What can you improve? How can you grow in this area? So thank you for that inspiration right from the beginning.
Thanks, Trista.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thanks for listening. Please subscribe to Trista's Plate Story podcast, share it, or leave a review. If you would like to nominate a license plate to be featured in a future episode, or you have an interesting Plate Story news item to share with me, leave us a comment or visit platestory.com. That's PL8STORY.com and give me all the details. This is Trista Polo, wishing you well on the road to your next adventure.